there any other questions to the motions? With that said, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Minutes will be put into the records. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue on with the new business. We probably won't be in here that long. We know currently that the school board is having their work session with Dr. Baker now. But the first item on the new business is clarification of the school superintendent's proposed budget versus the school board's adopted budget. I'll open it to the floor first.
Well, I had, what I had done is I had reached out to our chairman when I got the first email. I believe I talked to Tim about this a little bit privately at a soccer game, is that I wanted to clarify that the way it was reading, that when Dr. Baker presented at the end of January, that would not be what is going to be voted on February the 11th. What will happen is the minute they vote, school board immediately goes into work sessions. So you will see something different on the February the 11th. We just don't know what that's going to be. So I was just making sure that the timeline was clear, because it would be kind of spinning our wheels to work on his budget, because it's not going to be so by February the 11th when the actual vote by the school board does it. And just another note is on the February the 11th when the school board votes, pending it passing, even if it's not a unanimous, as long as it passes, it will then become the school board's budget and is never considered the superintendent's. And that verbiage is actually important as you move forward to make sure that we call it the school board's budget. It no longer belongs to the superintendent. So that was the clarification. He asked me to sort of put it in an email. I did, but he wanted me to also to just say what I said to him, just so everyone understood the timeline. Now, the only other part I mentioned to him on the timeline is that, as you all know better than me that have been on here longer, it really puts us in a crunch as a CBRC. It's not a really valid time to do the research that's required to do and return it by the end of February, because until February 11th's vote, we really won't know what the school boards look like. And the reason the school board is so important, their budget's so important, is not because their entity matters any more than the sheriff or the utilities department. It's because it's the largest piece of the pie that is taken from the county. It is the largest employer, and it's a big piece of the Spotsylvania County's pie. So that's why the CBRC has so much involvement in the school board's budget. So the 11th, we should get their budget. When our chairman and vice chair, which would be Mr. Bell and Mr. Davis, will present we have set them to present for us as the CBRC on the exact same evening that the chair and vice chair, which I believe is Dr. Meyer and Mr. Braswell, will present to them as well. So we'll all be here in the same room. They'll be presenting and we'll be presenting. So that's all it was. He just wanted me to share when I called him at home, that's what I told him, and he just wanted me to clarify that timeline. So that leaves us with only that one meeting on the 18th for us to really help put together a presentation for the gentleman to propose at the end of the month. Kim, the presentation day, is that the 26th? Okay.
The original budget calendar did have your presentation on the 26th, the same night that the school board would present their budget to the Board of Supervisors. But things are changing, and it is not official, because it won't be official until the board adopts it at their meeting on Tuesday. But it appears the plan is going to be that they're going to clear everything off of the 26th agenda and have nothing but the solar panel public hearings that night. And so the school board has agreed to present their budget on the 12th, the same night that the county administrator. So they'll adopt a budget on Monday and present a budget on Tuesday to the board. So you'll get both of those. You'll get the county administrators and the school board's budget on the 12th. And then your presentation will go, and all of this has to be approved by the board, because your bylaws clearly say that you have to make your presentation at the first meeting following the county administrator's presentation, which would be the 26th. So the board is going to have to approve a resolution that allows you all to push that out, and the next meeting would be March the 12th. And so you'll have till March the 12th to provide your presentation on both the county and the school budgets.
And I hope that gets adopted, because that definitely would be helpful. That buys that time that we just were discussing.
And the importance of the 12th, all of this leads up into the adoption date in April. And the importance of adopting in April is, well, there's two things. The school has to have a budget adopted by May 1st, I believe. And the county has to have a tax rate adopted so that the treasurer can get the bills out. And the bills, middle of April is about as far as he can wait before he starts processing the necessary work to get the bills out and to the citizens in time for them to have 30 days to pay their first tax bill in June. And so it all kind of starts from that tax bill and backs up into this really tight crunch time here. And as you know, the way the process works, both boards, the school board presents their budget, the county administrator presents his, a public hearing is required. And that public hearing has to be held 7 days before the budget is adopted. And it has to be advertised 7 days in advance of the public hearing. Part of that public hearing is the advertisement of not just the budgets, but the tax rates. And once they advertise, they cannot adopt any tax rate higher than what they've advertised without re-advertising, starting all over again and pushing everything back out again. And remember, we're pushing up against that mid-April date because of the treasurer's tax bill. So it's very important that they decide the right tax rate to advertise that gives them the flexibility they think is necessary. And we feel like in order for them to do that, you all play a role in that. What you tell them could be beneficial to their decision on what tax rate to advertise. And so we don't want them to make a decision on a tax rate to advertise and then hear from you at the next board meeting that you wish they had have done something different. So we're proposing that you all are here. The 12th is a work session with the schools, so the board will have already gotten their budget. They'll have a joint work session. They'll hear from you all, and then they'll decide what tax rate to advertise. And that way they've heard from all the pieces before they make that tax rate decision. So it is a little complicated. And this change, like I said, is all what is probably today is Monday. Tomorrow it'll be released on the agenda, the resolutions for this to happen at next Tuesday's board meeting. That is my understanding of the plan. And if the board adopts that plan, then that will, as you said, Ms. Blaylock, give a little more time this year for your presentation, but it's still, and I just want to point out too, the bylaws clearly say that you're supposed to look at the county administrator and the superintendents, but if this doesn't work, I think the last clause in your bylaws say that they can be amended, and that they can be amended by your suggestion. If you ask for something to be changed, and you as a group decide on what you'd like to have changed, and you present that to the board, and the board can look at that and decide whether to amend or not. So if there's a different way or a different process, there is a clause in your bylaws that allow you to make that happen, but it would require you to discuss it and for you as a group to make a suggestion that is presented to the board. So I think I've answered all those questions.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would like to make a motion that we amend our bylaws to the second meeting, presenting at the second meeting after the superintendent and the school board have presented their budget. So that's kind of what we're doing this year.
So amend it so that it would fall on essentially like March 12th, the actual day that we would be having.
Correct.
Now, I know and I apologize for being late. I just came from out of Tyson, so.
Oh, please.
But, so I missed some of what you were speaking about, Mary. As it relates to, when I was coming in, I heard you were talking about the tax rate and us having a discussion prior to, or us having a discussion before they advertise that rate. So.
Yeah, as she was coming up, basically, she was going over the dates, and then it's just part of that process is when they're gonna, once they approve the amount, the tax, then she started talking about the tax rate, and you just came in right at that moment. But basically, all this was talking about was the dates, so we didn't get into the meeting.
And the tax rate is important because it is one of the advertisements for the budget public hearing. It is a decision that the board has to make, and they have to make it in a timely manner so the treasurer can print the bills. And once they advertise the tax rate, they can only adopt something at that rate or less. And so it's important for them to know what flexibility they need in doing that. The budget calendar is pretty much the same format every year. Every other year it's a reassessment year, and every other year a reassessment requires additional advertisement by the state code. So we have, the dates stretch out a bit on those off years, but that 12th meeting, that meeting where there's a joint work session with the schools, I'd have to go back and look at last year's, but I believe that is also the tax rate advertisement, and so you could ask that you be on the same night as the tax rate advertisement. Now, what that means is the board will be hearing from you and making a decision the same night. You know, that's not the necessarily the perfect way of doing it, but as Ms. Blaylock pointed out, this thing is very tight. There's not a lot of wiggle room in it, and there's nothing to say that you couldn't have your presentation once the county administrator has reviewed it, because that is also part of the bylaws, have it out to the board in advance of that presentation so they can get their eyes on it. There are more than one way to get them to start looking at something other than just the presentation that you make that night. If you have it in advance, they would have an opportunity to look at it at that night and have questions for you. So, but my point, Greg, was that you know, the calendar's tight, it's very complicated, but the last clause of the bylaws allow the, it says the board approval is required to amend them, but the CBRC can discuss proposed changes during any regular meeting, and they can present those as a group to the board if they would like to make changes to these bylaws. So that might be a first thing we tackle after you tackle after we get through this budget process, is what makes more sense
Yeah.
in the future if there's a better way.
And I guess that's, I'm sorry, I'm stepped in, but I'm going to still defer to you right now.
No, Mary brought up a point that I noticed, that we will be discussing changing the date after the cycle, because a motion that came to the floor, I just want to make sure we weren't out of cycle. So we'll have to amend that motion, because unless everybody realizes, we'll be speaking of changing the bylaws after the presentation of the budget. We can't change it now.
It basically.
Well, they're delaying our presentation, so we're just basically putting it in line with what they're doing, and they've done that, I don't know if you recall, but they've done that several times. They've pushed it forward.
Oh, no, I agree. I wanted to make sure that we realize we're doing it for the next, even, which just so happens it fell in line now.
Right.
But we're voting for that.
So in order, if I'm hearing Catherine's motion correctly, in order to make this an official change that would be forever change, it says that the member may request consideration of a change and may submit the proposed language. So we would really need the language to be submitted and how you want to change the language in these bylaws. And then the CBRC would discuss it, and they would determine if they agree, and at that point, they would present those changes to the board. So there's a process to go through, basically, to make those changes happen.
Well, Mary, the change would be, instead of the next meeting after the county administrator proposes his budget, to the second meeting after.
And I believe that will work.
It's changing one word.
I believe that will work. I'm just not sure without looking at last year's calendar, which is the calendar that has the extra time built in for the reassessment year. I'd have to look at that, Catherine, to make sure that that works in both cases.
Okay.
I think they're very similar when it gets down to this point, but I don't know that for sure.
So
Okay.
can I recommend that we push the vote, table it to the next meeting, so we could have the bylaw in front of us?
Yeah, and
We
the
all can
language.
look at it, because it doesn't affect now anyway, but that way we'll all be on the same sheet of music. And we know we can probably do it, but at least we have the tools in front of us to be able to do that. So I think we're all kind of in agreement for the change, just a point of.
Catherine, once I
doing it
look at
right.
those, I'll email you and tell you what they say, and then we can draft some language. that
Okay,
we'll
well,
send back to them.
I'll withdraw my motion for now. Well, it never got a second, so you can't table something that didn't get a second. Or it fails for lack of a second.
Excuse me, how about I'll second that? I'll second her motion.
So we have a first, we have a second, but we know that we don't have enough information to continue on, so we will have to table it to our next meeting. No, because we never voted. Yeah, we never even voted.
Well, you have to make a motion to table it.
Correct.
need a motion to table.
Because we're not ending it, we're just putting it on the table to speak on it at the next meeting. It's still there. So it didn't
Excuse
die,
me,
it's lingering.
yes, you do need a motion to table a motion. Yes, you do.
Are we following Robert's rules?
Yeah. I thought everybody followed Robert's rules in this county on business meetings.
I know Robert's rules.
Just because you haven't used it doesn't mean you shouldn't have used it.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
can we, just
I'll make a motion to table.
Is there a
I'll second it.
So we have a first and second to amend the bylaws to change the date, but we also, figured out we didn't have enough information, so there was a motion to table our amendment to the bylaws to our next meeting. We have a first and second for that. Any discussions on that? All in favor?
aye.
Nays? So the motion's been approved to table our discussion on the amendment of the bylaws to our next meeting. And with that said, with our chair here, Mr. Gregg, thank you for allowing me to sit in for you. If you want me to keep going, I can, but if not, you can.
No, continue.
Okay. With that said, we were going through the dates. Does everybody actually understand? Because there was a lot of dates that was pushed out there. I kind of got thrown off, but I understand there is a cycle to it. I get it. I don't have all the dates in my head. I know we wanted, part of this was to discuss how we were going to review, because the third point there was to discuss the superintendent's budget. I know myself and Ms. Dawn was at the school board meeting. Was there anybody else that watched the presentation on television at all?
I did.
I did.
Good.
And I've reviewed the line item budget.
So with that said, I'll open up to the floor for different discussions of your thoughts. I guess we can do that first, and then we can narrow it down. Because at least this will start getting some things in our heads of what we saw. Because when you saw the 12 point whatever $1 million gap there, I'm pretty sure that's going to stick out. So, Catherine.
My impression, I think there are a lot of good things in that budget with the state, and this hasn't been, we don't know for sure yet. Everything depends on, if this passes for the state. One thing is a 5% salary increase across the board, but it's over a 2-year period. And according to Ms. Gaines, they can count the amount of money that they gave last year. So that would end up being 3% for administrators and 1% for teachers, which I'm totally against. But I think we'll make that, and I'm not sure, you can't be sure. But I believe, the supervisors and the superintendent adjusting his non-comp budget, because he does have a lot of initiatives in there. I think that'll happen, that we get those matching funds, and that's it's over $4 million.
4.6,
Yeah,
I think it was 4.6. I could be wrong
Right.
with that.
yeah.
But that was, when I was reading that and kind of looking at that was one of my questions, was how was it going to be phased in over that 2-year period? Was it going to be a equal 2.5% split for each
They
year?
already got 4% last year, except for the administrators got 2%. So according to Mrs. Gaines, the increases in 19 for FY19 count towards this.
So this would be a 1%
Yes.
increase?
For all non-administrator staff. I'm sure we're going to do better than that, or I would hope we would do better than that. But that's the requirement. He had some new initiatives, the kind of a teacher prep academy that would be held at Chancellor. Not a big expense, except they don't know how much it's going to cost to transport. One of the school board members asked for the transportation cost. And apparently we had one before, and it was discontinued in 2012. So Ms. Blaylock may remember that, and I'd like to ask you to comment on that.
On which part?
The Teacher Academy, can you tell us that we already had a teacher prep program, apparently, but it was dropped in 2012. Was it dropped because of lack of interest?
I won't comment because it's not popping in my head exactly right. Let me do the research, and I can definitely bring that back. But I'm not sure. But listening to these questions, I got to thinking maybe we have a liaison, have them come and sort of present, and let us ask all these questions and get them answered before we have to come up with their.
Well,
It would be great to have a member.
well, yes, that was one of my thoughts, and I'm not just saying that, is because we have time between now and then, that Ms. Shelley could, as a liaison, because she's usually here, and she did inform me that she wouldn't be at this
Because
one.
she's at a work session,
Yeah.
or she would be here.
But because
Yeah.
we have 2 meetings in the month of February, that she would be at the next one where we could then follow up with questions that we've had,
Yeah, and
which I think is appropriate, and I think will kind of allow us to kind of get some resolution to some of these. But I think this was really just for us to, as best as we could, get our hands around the budget and kind of formulate questions and kind of, so that we aren't just going in. We have questions prior to the next meeting
Yeah.
in the month.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have that question. I don't know off the top of my head. I can't remember, but yeah, I think it'd be great to have a question and answer with one on our next meeting. I think it's the 18th. If we could have her up at the podium, and we'll all have time to review what happens on the 11th. Which right now, everything we saw, I'm just going to hold off to the 11th. See what there's so many changes. The minute we would vote, we immediately went into work sessions, and I never saw one look remotely the same when we voted a couple weeks later.
Okay,
I do remember, Catherine, years ago when we would have high school students come into the elementary school and help out in the classroom, and it was part of a class of theirs. They were more going into the preschool area, so they would go work for a preschool like Miniland or someplace. We had that program, but I don't remember any that were going straight, into college and getting a degree that way. No, I think that's probably what you saw was that.
well, no, they mentioned the early childhood education program that still goes on, which I think you're talking about. And I think it's a great idea, but I would like to see it at all high schools, because having taught in the Commonwealth Governor's School, kids were reluctant to spend an hour on the bus and leave their home school. And if you're talking about somebody going from Spotsylvania to Chancellor, that might be 30 minutes one way. I had hoped they would also put ROTC in all the schools, because in my 30 years, I've seen a lot of programs come and go. And without a doubt, the ROTC program has been, in the county that I taught in, one of the most successful programs. So there is something that I would draw your attention to. The superintendent has put in $500,000 for educational reimbursement for classes. They were able to give $100 million this year, and out of one-time funds.
You mean $1 million?
They put $1 million in it?
No, you just said $100 million.
No, I said $500,000.
Yes, but then afterwards you said $100
Five-
million, and I'm going, whoo, I like that money.
500,000. So
Okay, yes.
basically what they're doing is moving from the one-time funds to recurring. I would hope I hope the school board does whatever they need to do to be able to fund the salary increases. There were one big thing, there were no new increases in health insurance rates, which really helps, because when you get your step or your percentage and it's eaten up by increased health insurance rates, so I think that'll help our employees here. I did compare his professional development number to Stafford's proposed. Stafford has 6,000 more students and a lot, naturally they have more teachers. Theirs is around 323,000. And Spotsylvania's got theirs up to, again, 500,000. So that might be a place I would look if I were a school board member, if I'm having to move money around to ensure that we can give those raises.
Yeah, but professional development is something that is required of us to renew our licenses.
Yes, I'm very well
And
aware of that.
It's been a long time since we've had any money to be able to go to something like a conference or something that's new, instead of just going to, like, tomorrow I go to the report card committee, and that's part of mine.
Well, Dawn, I would suggest you go on their site and you go to the finance department and to the accounts payable and look at the budget list. I think we're doing a great job in sending employees to conferences, and they're spending a lot of money on that. And the whole time I was a teacher, I got to go to 2 conferences, one in Richmond and one in Roanoke, and now they're going to them, to Canada, they're going to, LA, because that's where some of these things are. So I also thought as a teacher that, a lot of that professional development money we got, didn't trickle down to the classroom teacher. So I agree with you on that.
What I'd like to put out for us is being that we're going to have a representative from the school to come and answer some of the questions. I would like to recommend that we submit questions to the chair by the 12th, so they can be submitted to our the school board representative, and then that way she would come and have answers instead of giving them to her on that day. So that serves no purpose to doing that. And secondly, I think what I would like to understand, I would just say dumb, what I like to understand is what is it that we're trying to accomplish by reviewing the budget? Because technically, there's no changes we're really going to be able to make within the budget. So we have to be reasonable in, how in-depth or what we're really going after when you're looking at this budget.
I was about to make a point of where I feel exactly the same. We have to be careful. We can't tell them how to spend their money. We have our personal opinions, but they have public hearings for that. We go to another place to say that. We have to stay in the line of what we can do, and we're kind of talking about some areas we wouldn't have the choice anyway. So I would just caution to stay on what the CBRC is here to do, and we can't go in and tell the school division or anyone else how to spend it. We can report if we think it's inefficient or it could be spent a better way. So some of it, yeah, I think would work, but some of the things we were just talking about, I think we're sort of dipping in an area that isn't our playground.
Well, it says discussion, and he wanted to know some of the things that were brought up, and I think we should, if for the members that have not seen the school board meetings or seen the documents, certainly which I would hope that we would be able to review. Mary, will we be able to get our copies of the school board budget on February 12th? The same night we get the county administrator's budget. And I brought you back the notebooks, so I have them in my car. I'm asking about both sides.
Happen on the county side. On the county side, the night that the county administrator makes his presentation, the budget will be available on the website. You will all get the summary documents that we give you, the smaller version of it, and the larger version, the full version and the summary will both be on the website for your review. We'll also give you copies of the county administrator's presentation. In the case of the county administrator's presentation, it's typically very much the same as the budget strategy that lays out the steps, but I'll give you a copy of that too, because sometimes those documents are easier to flip through. On the school side, Greg had talked to them about that.
Yeah, Ms. Shelley and I had spoken I guess it was last week now because we're in a new week. And she had mentioned that due to their staff having a significant amount of workload, that they would not be able to provide us with physical copies of the budget. And I said that was fine. But that they would be able to, of course, it would be on the website, and that we could go there and we could review it that way. Not ideal, and I think we had only asked for, I think maybe one at the most, maybe two hard copies. So we weren't asking for a lot. So I don't think that should really impact our ability to review the budget, because we weren't asking for everyone to have a hard copy.
We
of
have
that.
gotten 7 hard copies every year. We have gotten hard copies. In fact, Dawn picked them up for us last year. And I am requesting that we get a hard copy, everyone.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes.
going to need a hard copy.
I will follow back. Can we put that in the notes? I will follow back up with Ms. Shelley and forward that request.
I mean, all we can do is request it, and if they give it to us, great. It is what it is. So if we get 7, we get 7. I printed my own out last time, so it didn't matter. But all I can say is we can request it. Make it easy.
I'll have them here on the 12th if y'all are at the presentation that the county administrator makes the budget on the 12th. Otherwise, I'll leave them with Nadira and county admin, and you can pick them up. But they'll be here that night. I'll have them for you.
Can I just throw out, will you have mine here at the next meeting? I'll be on travel that week, so just leave mine here is fine. Thank you.
Or I'll just keep it with me and have it at the next meeting.
Another part that's not on the agenda, because we spoke through the schedule, we spoke about different concerns we had with the budget. We know when we're going to have to give a presentation. I want to throw out there, what is it that we would like to see in general in our presentation? Because the time to talk about this is not when we come back together on the 18th. I'd rather discuss it now. Just in general, what are the big rocks that we think we should cover?
For me, what I would like to do initially is just do a quick snapshot and review of the previous things that we've discussed in the past year and we reviewed. Just to kind of put that out there. And then going forward, we would need to have a discussion about, the county and the school board's budget. And so I think based off of our follow-up discussion with Ms. Shelley and from hearing, the county's proposed budget, that it's a small window, but again, this is nothing that we haven't talked about. If we can find areas that could be improved, fine. We may not, under the new proposed budgets or adopted budgets, there may not be a whole lot for us to say or talk about. And that may be one of the things where, okay, this is, we don't have a lot of recommendations, or, we don't find any inefficiencies in it. So, I mean, that's just once we get into it, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
And that was kind of my point when we go through as far as deep diving into it. We're not going to really make that big of a change, but we can, if there's something that's seen, and we know that it is a huge gap or concern, I think we should mention it. Because at least they'll see that it is mentioned. It's something they can look at until next year or something of that nature. And, they will just commend us for, catching that or making that a particular concern. And that shows that we did look at the budget. Because if we go down into the weeds, we can always find something, but is it a major impact until the vote that's going to happen like right there? And even if that's true, we'd probably have to send them an email ahead of time and say, this is something that we've recognized. And do you mind if we bring it to your attention during the, during the brief? I just want to make sure that we all kind of understood what was going to be briefed, and we can start thinking about that. And I don't want us all to be shocked on the 18th to try to put something together.
I think Catherine, Ms. Dennis said it.
Thank you. What we've done in the past, we of course did present the results from that we had done in the past year since we met with them. But we also had reviewed both budgets. There is initiative that I think is going to really help our county. It's a pay, what do you call it, Tim? A pay?
So the county is looking, well, no, let me rephrase that. A presentation was made at the last Board of Supervisors meeting by the sheriff and the fire chief regarding the looking into a STEP program within the county. Their presentation specifically dealt with public safety. However, several of the board members had expressed a desire to see this implemented countywide. And this was in reaction to the compression issues and the pay band structure that the county's been operating off of for the last few years, and how even after Evergreen is finally being implemented the third year this year, how that has not properly addressed the compression issues that still exist in county government. So it's a step system that basically mirrors a military or federal pay grade system that gives you a pay based off of tenure with the agency or the county, not just in grade.
As a citizen, I was very concerned about the number of vacancies that we are carrying in both the sheriff's department and fire emergency services. I believe we were 17 firefighters down, and we were, or firefighters, medics, and we were about the same with the sheriff's department. We've heard our chief tell us that they don't have the personnel to be able to get that second ambulance out at Company 6, which is up there by Salem Church Road. And that's a very, very busy station. We need to ensure that we have the firefighters. And I would hope that the other thing that might happen is that they start giving them credit for years of service when they come in, like we do with our teachers. I believe we give up to maybe 15 years.
We gave 16, we bumped it to, I believe, 20.
20 years.
In the last
and I think
year
that's
or two.
Good. I think
Yeah.
that's really
I agreed with
good.
it too, I supported it, yeah.
Yeah, so, because if a firefighter comes from Stafford and he's been a firefighter for 12 years, he comes here, he starts at step 1. And the same with the sheriff's department. I'd like to see more things aligned between, financially, for my taxes, I would like to see it equal on both sides. So when we get to whatever the percentage is that we are able to, the school board's able to give to the school employees, I'd like that same, for me, same percentage for county employees. Because it was not the same last year. I believe county employees only got maybe 2.5%. Is that correct, Mary?
Well, this year is only year 2 for the school employees for the Evergreen study, and that's why it was 4% for school employees last year. And we fought to get all school employees at 4% because it wasn't going to be all. So except for administrators, I know that. This year, Dr. Baker wants to do the 5%, so the 4% he had of the second year for the Evergreen plus the 1% extra from the state, because the counties have to give as much as the state does.
Well, what he has in his budget, year 2 for Evergreen for the schools is only $500,000.
That's for certain other people that need to be bumped up further, but for everybody else, it's a hybrid of what the Evergreen study actually said to do, because he felt this was all they could afford. So it's a 4% for everybody else across the board. And then there are certain, like probably paras, custodians, those cafeteria workers that would get more on top of the 4%.
Well, they gave $7 million last year, which was enough to fund the full Evergreen implementation in 1 year, if you'll remember the presentation.
That's not what happened, though.
Well,
the
it's
Evergreen's
not
supposed
what
to be
happened, but
4% for the next 3 years.
The Board of Supervisors never approved 4% for the next 3 years.
Well, school board is that's what they approved. 4% for last year, this year, and next year of the Evergreen study
Well,
for the
once
school
they,
system.
they make their allocation, the school board can do, as you said, as they please. But it might be that they have to decrease some of the non-comp items.
There is nothing in non-comp to decrease anymore.
You need to look at the line item budget and see some of the increases.
I don't want to, I mentioned this before, I don't like when we go back and forth. What point would we like to use to implement this into our brief, or is this a concern that we need to address?
Well, I guess my concern about the whole, and Amanda and I briefly spoke about this at the soccer game. The one thing I guess I want clarification from, and I guess this is something that I would need to send to you, Greg, to have Ms. Shelley answer. I'm all for our educators being compensated appropriately. The thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around is when general county government has implemented their plan over the last couple of years, there was not an across-the-board pay increase. There was a COLA, a merit, but then there were additional percentages depending on tenure with the county. So the plan was to decompress the pay. The problem I have is doing across-the-board pay increases across all employees does nothing to address the compression that you have going on within your employees. So I guess my biggest question, and it's not that I'm opposed to pay raises for the school system by any means, but Tim Briner's opinion is it's being done in the wrong way. What the school system should have done in the first place is decompress their employees, because in my mind, when you do across-the-board pay increases, you're not looking out for your people that have stuck with the organization, because they're getting a 4%, just like the newbies getting a 4%. And I think that the school system should be decompressing their individuals first, which is what we're tackling within general county government right now. And then after the decompression takes hold, then start going back and looking at market studies again and all that. Because I can tell you what happened under Evergreen. They did a market study, they adjusted stuff, and compression was so bad, it didn't rectify the problem. So we need to build a firm foundation. I think the county needs to do that, and I think the school system needs to do that before they start talking about across the board 5% and 4% pay increases every year. Because I can tell you, I didn't get 5% last year. And I'm just saying it deals with compression. The newer people are not supposed to be getting as much right now until we get that decompression done and then work from there. And that's my concern, my biggest concern. Well, I have some questions about the number of people they're asking for all in 1 year too, but my biggest concern is I think the school board or the schools are going at it the wrong way. I think we need to lay that foundation first and build upon that, but that's just my opinion. So.
That's how the school division has always done their raises since I've been there, when we've gotten them. I mean, they've been a lot smaller, 1%, 1.5%, but that is how they have always done it. They did away, I got one step increase in 13 years, maybe two. So they stopped the steps ages
Okay,
ago.
like I said, I want to make sure that we're going, and that's great, but we were supposed to keep this in a general discussion, and then we can have the suggestion of questions. We're not going to, remember I said we're not going to solve anything today.
No,
You're
but we're
You're not going to even
discussing.
dissolve, because we can discuss till midnight, and I don't plan on being here till midnight.
Well,
So,
I'd just like to say, I've said it before, and I'll say it again tonight. Just because you've been doing it a certain way doesn't make it the right way to happen. Okay? And I do not believe in cross-the-board raises. I've worked all my life. I've run crews. I've had companies. And nobody ever worked for me that got a raise that didn't deserve a raise. You don't just give out raises just because it's another year gone by.
I wouldn't
They're
say
not
that's what the school
worthy of
division
their
does.
raises, then they need another job.
We have a school person coming, we talked about. Can we all ask that person when they come in the future? And it's not as simple as we're just giving people, these people are working. But to go back to what Mr. Davis had asked, here would be my points for your presentation I'd like to see covered. If you don't, that's fine. But I would say, talk about all the reports we did. And I would want to talk about sometimes if we didn't find deficiency, it's okay not to have change. It's still a report if we're reporting people are efficient. The comparisons we've made would be a good thing for y'all to bring up. The trends we see, and that probably won't be able to even be looked at till we get the new numbers after the 11th, compare them to last year's. See if those trends, how much came out of this department, that we need to probably check the trends. I think one thing we really need to address is clearly we were given a new direction by Supervisor Yakubowski, talk about how we address his concern, and we changed for him. He wanted us to do something different. We clearly went another way and let them know that we heard, we listened, and we followed his instruction. Is something I'd like to point out. And that's just some general. They don't have to be those. That's my ideas of what to talk about in our presentation. And then I have to say, though, Ms. Dennis said something I didn't know. And I think the CBRC would be wise to think about what she just said, because I would like to see in the presentation something she hit on. I didn't realize that the fire and rescue did not get to bring any numbers with any years with them. You will never retain or recruits, you're right. We will never recruit proper fire and rescue if we don't let them bring we don't have to let them bring them all. I get you can't have somebody who's about to ready to retire bring it all over here. But the school division always gave 16 years. We bumped it up to improve recruitment from human resources. That is a gem. I didn't know that was there. I'm going to do my homework. I did not realize we had that many open spots, but to hear you say 17 fire.
Yes, I think the presentation is online.
Okay.
I know they just had a firefighter academy, so maybe they filled some. But even if we just align it with the schools.
Right.
In the schools, you can bring 20 years, and I think that's
Right.
great. And I think in the county, for our firefighters and our law enforcement officers, they should be able to bring their years also.
That absolutely,
that? And
and
there's a
that is, and I'm going to have to step out. I'm one man down in my house. My older son's not around. I got to go pick up my child, and but I think that's something the CBRC could find. That's an inefficiency to me. It's not a money maker, but it's still an inefficiency.
That is a county compensation philosophy.
Yes,
That's why that happens. If you review the county compensation philosophy, the county does not allow departments within the county to hire people at higher than 10%, is it, Mary?
Well-
Yeah, what is it?
I've got to go.
First, so it is set by county policy, and the only way they can be brought in higher than that is if they get permission from the county administrator to waive that. Am I not correct on that?
Well,
So, and that's the problem is
That's why. So
that's a
there's a policy-
compensation philosophy from the county
Yeah.
that overrides all the department directors,
Okay.
and they have to get it.
all that's news to me, and that's good to know. And I would be 100% on board with being behind you carrying that flag, because that's a very important thing. I watched in the school division. It's huge. You will not recruit sometimes maybe the most qualified candidates, because we're having to bring people with experience. Will go somewhere where their experience is valued.
yeah, especially
So
if you're
good
talking,
point. I really think that's one the CBRC might want to jump on.
especially if you're talking about individuals that are moving to the area.
Well, who would want to, too?
Yeah, so it is a
And when you think about,
point.
and I know, Tim, you'll relate to this. I've heard this. We will train people, spend tons of money to train them like for a deputy, and they'll leave. Well, if we bring somebody in, we kind of get it in the reverse. Somebody else trained them, but we get all that experience.
And the presentation that happened, a week or two ago, the sheriff said it's 18 months. From the time we hire somebody, get them through the academy, field train them, and get them on the road, it is 12 to 18 months before that deputy is actually producing a benefit to services for this county. So when we lose guys like we just have recently, it is now near the end of 2020 before we will start seeing the benefit of their replacements if we can't go and hire somebody that's already certified.
Yeah, I personally think she hit on something, and it's something that would definitely make this county not only run better, but it would recruit better, and I'm sure Human Resources would be interested in this as well in the county, so.
Maybe we
What-
can.
Excuse me, what you're saying is we hire people that have experience in the sheriff's department or whatever, and we still send them to the academy after they've been doing this
No,
job?
we're talking about if someone is in Stafford and they have 10 years of experience.
Well,
and
I
they-
know what we're talking about, the tenure. He just
Oh,
said
he's
that-
talking about something different,
He
okay.
said that we hire these guys and it takes 12, 18 months to go through the academy and get onto the street. Do we do that with people that already have experience, that's already been to an academy?
No.
These are just new.
So yeah, this is just a new hire. Nobody's got prior LE. They're not certified to be a law enforcement officer. By the time you hire them, put them through the academy, they go through
understand
their
that.
480 hours of
I
field
was
training.
just- I was-
Yeah, no, I apologize if.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I just took it that
And the-
everyone had
and-
it. But I also agree that these guys should have tenure. I mean, I've been in the businesses, and I never hired anybody at the same rate that a new guy came on if he had 6, 8, 10, 12 years experience in my field.
And part of the proposal under that step
Right.
system that they're looking at with the county is the ability for department directors to bring people in at a specific step within that pay system, which would help address some of this if that gets adopted.
Thank you,
down
Ms.
the road.
Blaylock.
It would also be a financial efficiency because the sheriff said the total cost for a new person to law enforcement, the academy, the field training, is $75,000. And I think it's somewhere between 25 and 40,000 for someone going through the firefighter academy.
Is it possible, and I'm just kind of putting this out there, because I know, again, we can have a conversation about this all night, at our next meeting, Mary, to have someone from the fire department and sheriff's office to potentially we will,
Chuckly, because the chief is almost always here.
yeah,
And he's
exactly.
just not here tonight. I think this is the first time the chief has missed a meeting, so I will make sure he knows.
Just 15, 20 minutes of his time. We won't bombard him, but
You were talking about the fire chief and someone from the sheriff, right?
if possible.
Would you be interested in them, I mean, their presentation, I think it was 5 slides.
Sure.
I mean, would you be interested in them showing that presentation to you all? Would that be,
Yeah.
Yes.
okay. I can ask them to do that for you.
Is everyone?
Yes.
Right, and
Okay
when
with
we present, I'd be happy to present that part for you all, because I've really watched it, and I'm not an employee, so, I mean, Tim
Yeah.
would be the best to speak to it, but I'd rather put the money in salaries and be able to staff all those vehicles, especially those ambulances. I mean, there was an incident at Chancellor High School with some food that was brought in that had
Yes, I heard of that.
drugs, and it took 3 companies, their ambulances, to transport students to the hospital. That left the entire Route 3 corridor without an ambulance. So I have a question that's not related to that for
Can I
Mary.
just- Before you go to that, can I just say, just so you'll know too, the board that night did direct, they were interested and very interested in what both the fire and the sheriff said. They were also interested in that type of proposal across all county departments, and they directed staff to review it. So we have not, I mean, we literally today got our budget to the printer, so that's been our focus. But we have been directed to work with HR and finance staff to review those numbers. There's a lot more looking into their proposal. I think everybody understands the idea behind it, but it does take some more thought and some more specific reviews. And so we are in the process of doing that. So just so you'll know, I mean, I could certainly have them here to show you what they presented, but there's a whole lot more to happen from county staff. So-
Understood.
The question, Mary, is do you have an idea of what Mr. Taylor's proposing for a pay increase for county employees?
The county administrator, the first year of the compensation study, which was 2 years ago, the board approved the compensation philosophy, which said that this will be the third and final year. So those people that were short according to the market study will get their third piece of that. There will also be those that even though we didn't fully address the compression issues, we did implement increases when people reach 3, 5, 10, 12, and 15 years of service. And their 3 and 12 are 0.5% increases, and 5, 10, and 15 are 1%. So if people reach those this year, if someone reaches their third year, their fifth year, their 10th year, or 12th year, they'll get that increase this year. And then the last piece that is part of the philosophy is the cost of living, which is based on the CPI. And right now, the CPI is tracking at 2.4%.
Okay, thank you.
So that's, based on what the board approved in their philosophy last year, that will likely be exactly what's in that budget, so.
What are you seeing in revenues to the county?
I don't have those numbers in front of me.
No,
There
I
are-
mean,
Yeah,
just-
there are some increases
Okay.
in revenues. There are also some increases in order to address the fact that we did not have ALS coverage at 24/7 at all stations. The board added positions last year, mid-year, so there's a lot of funding full year that has to happen. There were the Medicaid expansion mean that we had to hire social services positions mid-year, so now they have to be funded for a full year. So there are a lot of things that, even though there are revenue increases, that will automatically be absorbed with those things that have to be funded for the full year. But there were some increases.
Okay, okay.
And that, the details will be, like I said, on the 12th, the county administrator will make his presentation, and I'll make sure that you all have those summary documents, and they'll be on the website that evening, too, so.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Great suggestions from everyone. I really like the suggestions of the balance of compensation, because that happens, as you see, across every department in Spotsylvania. We have a tendency to even bring quality folks on, but we end up losing them to the surrounding counties, and it doesn't, as you see, it doesn't matter whether it's fire, police, school. It's a shame that happens, and I hear that almost in every meeting that I go to. My thing is look at that and do something about it to balance it out. I think this is going to be really good to bring it up in the proper manner at the next meeting with our brief, and I think it'll help highlight that particular situation across the board. We just have to make sure we explain it that way. I mean, so we're not, you're not poking a finger, but it's something that everybody understands, but sometimes they have to take a step back, and that's our job, is to see that gap, and I think that's a gap that's across the board. We just maybe try to help them fix that across the board. So like it's, Mary, thanks. I mean, wow, you're incredible. All the information you have, wow.
Mr. Chair,
uh-huh.
if I may make an observation, are we assuming that all of our employees are worthy or leaving us because they're not being compensated, or there are other reasons, or are there problems amongst the employees or departments, or somebody just wants to go to work somewhere else? All this can't be based on money.
I wouldn't say it's all based on money, but a huge, the common theme is, and man, I've been here since 2000 and been dealing with a budget for almost 6 years or so. But listening to the constituents that's out in the county, what happens is, if I have a PhD, right, or a master's, and I come to Spotsylvania, and a lot of people say, well, they have good school districts here, right? And they'll come here. But then they'll find out that they have a PhD or a master's, they can go right to Stafford and get their pay doubled. I know individuals that's in the, I'll just say, like, police force up north. They live in this general area. They would love to come and work down here, but they would know they won't get paid. And as we were talking about their tenure and their retirement, things like that, they know they would lose it if they came down to this level. So some of it's personality, don't need to go down that road, but majority of it.
There's a lot of reasons we hear, but we I think we agree on one thing. I think tenure is important. Mm-hmm. It's man's knowledge of what he's doing for a living is everything.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
and
we
one
got a
thing
guy
we've
that's
noticed
been-
that most of people that live in Spotsylvania commute.
Yeah.
And they commute because the cost of living is great here, but you can, I mean, I commute, I do the same thing, but man, does it get me, that's why I don't want to be here too long.
Our numbers are 62 of every 100 workers in Spotsylvania County works outside the county.
Well,
Those are our numbers.
one thing I would like to add, I believe the county and the schools need to look at the benefit packages. In the schools, you can retire at 15 years. There is nowhere else that I can think of that will give you not the retirement, but the retiree benefits at 15 years. They also pay for the spouse's insurance after retirement. They don't even do that for the military. When you retire from the military, the man or woman that served, that they get the insurance. So on the county side, they did try to change the Medicare supplement, and that did not pass. And people need to look at the benefits. I think we give the just unbelievable benefits here. And when you're speaking about PhD and masters, and even a college education, if someone has a college education and they come here and they join the police, the sheriff's department, or the fire and rescue department, they don't get any extra money for that. We always did as teachers. So, I mean, we do have work to do. I do believe this compensation study, a proposal on fire and rescue, police, is something I personally back. I really hope the CBRC would back it too.
Greg?
Yes, ma'am.
I know, I'm not really.
No, you're fine.
I
But
just,
but
I just
but
had an
Sean is the chair
observation.
that-
I worked for a police department in California, and we were one of the lowest paid departments. And this is not just endemic to Spotsylvania. Same thing happened with us. We would train the officers, and then they'd go to LA or wherever and make more money. And I don't know why, but like if you go to a hospital and they put you through nursing school, you sign a contract that you're going to work for that hospital for so many years, or you'll pay the money back that cost for your education. And they in San Diego, it was like $125,000 to get us trained, and they would get their post certificate and off they'd go to another department. And to me, it makes sense that if somebody's hired, a condition of employment should be you'll sign this contract that you're going to work for us until you break even what we cost to train you, and if not, you have to pay us back. But I don't know why that's never even
That's you see that more in the corporate world,
right.
with organizations.
But if you train someone, there should be an expectation that they're going to work for you for a few
I agree.
years.
yes.
And
I
that's, I
agree.
think they have that to a certain extent, but and like I said, we can discuss that forever too, but I think if we bring that up in a proper manner, I think it would be something for us as the CBRC to highlight, because that's what we're supposed to know.
Because that would be an
That's a great trend.
efficiency.
Yes, I think it's a great trend, so, go ahead,
Now, as
Val.
far as the health insurance, in '09, the school system did indeed change that. So people only get $214 a month towards their health insurance now. But they had to have been hired after '09 for that to go into effect. Before that, it's still what it was, but they did indeed change it.
All right, any other further discussions? Because if not, I'm going to recap and go on. Like I said, questions, great comments. I want to commend everybody. We were getting that. This is the kind of discussion we're supposed to have, is those, how can we fix it in general? Because remember, we're never supposed to point fingers. Even, it may seem like it, but when we start talking about our brief, we want to put a broad kind of fix and then let them go and do their research and actually fix it. So with that said, I would like to have everybody that has a concern or a concern that's kind of a question, please send that to the chair, so we can get those questions out to the police department and the fire department and the school department, since we're going to have 3 of them briefing us on the 18th. You don't have to ask the questions today, but please forward those. And Mr. Chair, we have the dates that we have that's coming forward. We have our meeting on the 18th. The work sessions, we still should be able to.
We always
attend
had, we always had another, well, in the past, we've added a meeting before the presentation. So we might want to meet, 2 weeks after the 18th.
Yeah,
And then that
that's-
would give us time, to help you guys get the presentation together.
And that's something that maybe we can talk about at the conclusion of the 18th meeting. Where and how do we want to put something on the calendar? I don't know if it really is, yeah, because I think it's a good idea, but I don't know if we put a date out there right now, I don't know if it really means as much until we get to the 18th and then kind of have a discussion.
Well, Mary, would another date 2 weeks after the 18th, would this be available? Okay, okay. Okay. Okay,
Check if the availability of this room.
Sure.
Any dates after, that way we
Right.
have.
sure.
Correct. Yep.
18th.
12th.
Right.
I believe that's what we're asking, right? Just-
Yes, the week of the 24th or the week of the 3rd.
That would be March 4th.
Yes.
Would be 2 weeks. And then I think we would be in really good shape. I'm appreciative that the Board of Supervisors pushed us forward.
I think if, Mayor, if you can just check on the dates, and then we can do it through email like we did before and finalize it. I'm not, I think
I'm not.
we'd look at the dates first and then see what we
I'm
have.
not, I'm not tied.
Kind of like we did before, and then we're communicating pretty well, I think, with the email, so I think we can work that out.
Sean, I had one more question. When do we talk about suggestions of things to review, other than the schools? After we're done with
Yeah,
that?
we'll
Okay.
Put all that on hold till we can get through the
Okay.
budget, and then we'll start picking up after that.
Yeah, because now that we're. Keep forgetting. Now that we're in budget season, we got to get through the budget, and then if you have something that you want to, right after the 4th, whatever meeting we have, we'll start throwing that out with
Okay.
suggestions, and then,
Sounds good.
because we'll actually have the budgets in our hand, and we can begin to plan the next year and the things we actually need to look at. So you do need to kind of have that in your head, because you don't really need to know, but some of you have your concerns, so we just know we're in the money crunch right now, but right after that, we can say, hey, let's go like we did the social service and things like that. We can put those up front and then lay it out throughout the year, and we kind of have our format, because I knew this year was going to be kind of scraggling when we try to do the new format. That's kind of hard, but we kind of know what it is. Next year, we're going to know what those departments are. We'll go talk to the people, come back with a report, put it in the Google format that we have, and then we'll have our reports that we'll give to the Board of Supervisors, so.
Well,
great,
On the Google form, Dawn, I think we've got to have places for money. We're supposed to be looking at figures. We're not evaluating the efficiency of a department. And I'm just curious, Karen, where did you want to look when we finish?
I don't want to get into that
I'm
today.
just
because
curious.
Because
I
we're
just
going to
wanna
go
hear.
down a whole nother rabbit hole to do that.
No.
Kathy, what precisely would you like to see?
I'd like to see, where we show them the budget and how much it had increased from the prior fiscal year.
So just a column for comparison.
Yeah,
of-
just a
of-
little something.
of
We
prior
have to
fiscal
put
year and
something
current
in
fiscal
there
year.
about cost.
Do you want to know? Go ahead, tell me.
It's just there was a post on January 20th on social media about big concerns with the animal shelter and how money is being appropriated there and used and maybe not used properly for veterinarian. 87 plus shares, I mean, pretty much it's out there, so I thought that might be something we would take a look at. But Mary, you could maybe answer. The animal shelter budget, it's in the sheriff's, it's part of the sheriff's department, but is it delineated so that their costs could be looked at separately from the entire
Yeah, it's.
budget? Not necessarily for the animal control officers, but just the expenses at the shelter was what I was
The-
interested in.
Yeah, the shelter is actually run by the sheriff. And
Right.
when that happened, we did consolidate. There are two divisions within our accounts, but I think they are combined in that budget. I'm trying to visualize it, I'll be honest with you, Karen.
Okay.
But we can certainly give you the details, line item budgets for the animal shelter, because we do track it separately on our side.
Okay.
So that's not a problem. If you all wanted to bring that up when you begin.
Just
to go
because
down
it's
that
so
path, I'll
out
do
there
that.
right now, I mean, maybe not if you don't have the internet, but there's a lot of people talking about what was going on the post. I mean, it was long, and so I just thought it might be something we might take a look at.
Yes.
Oh, which is great. That's why, keep it in your head. You're not going to throw it aside. That would be one thing that I know that we will, because we've learned that we can look at multiple things at one time now, which is great. We've improved. Yeah, so we can, yes. And so I think next year is going to be really great and how we go forward to look at the different, I'm really excited about that. Even, as we know, looking back how we're going into this budget period, we've improved even how we're doing that. So, and look around, we have full, all the chairs are full, so that's pretty cool too. With that said, like I said, a lot of great comments. One big thing, please, I have to keep send the questions. It was by the 12th good for you?
Yeah, and I would suggest to send them to both of us.
Yeah, or like you guys do, but because.
Well, don't we, Mary has to submit them, so why don't we submit them, to Mary with a,
No. So they will be submitted. Send them to Sean and I will submit them directly to Ms. Shelley.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
are we saying that when they present to us, the only questions they're going to get is the ones we've handed to you guys?
No,
to hand
sir.
in?
No, we are.
No, you're going to get the general gist of the
Yeah, so
questions.
if there's
But
some-
if they say something out there, we can put them on the spot.
Well, yeah, you can ask whatever questions you want, but sometimes questions, especially as it relates to the budget, can be in-depth and complex. And
Right.
I would like to for them to have the ability to do research and kind of bring the information that they can give us the
So-
most clarified
I
answer
got
they
you.
possibly
So
can.
that what questions we may have for them would be based on what they say at the podium.
You could have follow-up questions.
Thank you.
definitely.
That's what I was asking.
Yes.
So, yeah, so just because it's not try to stump the person we're gonna, which we all know that, but, because we're always gonna have follow-on questions and what they have, but if you see how our discussions have gone today, we
in the
can really
planning-
get in-depth in some of our discussions, whereas, let's give them a chance to do a little bit of
Exactly.
research and give us some answers, but you know you're gonna have a follow-on question, we always do. But
Okay.
it's better to give them up front. Right, or just
'Cause I
ask them that
found
day, and
in-
be like, I don't know, so we don't wanna do that.
On the planning commission, it works out real well because they'll say something that, and you can ask them right directly and clarify. Thank you.
So with that said, anyone else, has comments?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Bless your heart. Is there a second one? Questions to the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you all again. We are adjourned till our next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for trusting me.
No, thank you.